Hello! Now, this video is, again, it's going to be a bit of a departure from my usual making content. This video is about Ghostbusters, or more specifically about the Ghostbusters fandom. At the moment, certainly, the Ghostbusters fandom is a seemingly toxic fandom. Now, I like the 2016 Ghostbusters movie. I think it's a good movie. It's a very fun movie. A lot of Ghostbusters fans don't. They typically give reasons along the lines of the movie's too goofy, it just isn't very good cinematically, etc., etc. They don't like the plot, they don't like the villain. I'm not entirely convinced that's the real reason that they don't like this movie. I think it has a lot more to do with it being an all-female cast and there being a lot of misogyny in the Ghostbusters group. I think that, the movie is not without flaws, don't get me wrong. I think the main flaw it suffers from is the same flaw that the movie, I think it was released about 2006, there was a movie called The Italian Job, and it suffers from the fact that it is not the original Italian Job. Ghostbusters 2016 suffers from the fact it is not the original Ghostbusters. Both of those films, if you view them as a standalone movie, they are good movies. The problem comes when you try to incorporate the 2016 movie as part of the franchise, because in my opinion it's a movie that doesn't quite know what it is. It doesn't know whether it's in the same universe as, or a total reboot, because you have things like the inclusion of Slimer, you have the taxi driver saying, "I ain't afraid of no ghosts," which kind of puts it in universe, and it does kind of make sense as an in-universe movie. This is a new team discovering the same sort of technology, because they have ghost traps, they have proton packs. And that's one of the things I do really like about the 2016 movie is in 1984 Ghostbusters, the team is set up, and it seems, in movie terms, possibly about a week later, they have a fully functioning, polished proton pack, they have the Ecto-1, and they're going out busting ghosts. Whereas in 2016, you see that development of the gadgets and the ghost-busting kit throughout, which, as someone who likes building things, likes building props, I appreciate that as being, there are so many more things you could do with the props from 2016 in a way than you could with 1984, because you could say, I'm going to take it to the next progression beyond the end where Holtzman improves it again. I'm getting off topic here. There's that argument to say it's in universe. The argument against that, and it's one of the things I really don't like in this movie, is the Bill Murray cameo. What seems to be like a gratuitous cameo of Bill Murray in that movie, clearly as a completely different person. And that to me tells me it's not in universe, this is a full reboot. But now, counter to that also has come out recently is obviously Ghostbusters Afterlife. I like it as a sequel to the original two Ghostbusters movies. Personally, I don't think it necessarily stands up as a standalone movie, and that's because there are so many callbacks to the original. I don't think that Ghostbusters Afterlife would make sense as a movie if you hadn't seen Ghostbusters 1984 and Ghostbusters 2. The original team is brought in at the end. There is this assumption that you know who that team is, because there is the assumption that you have seen 1984 Ghostbusters and or Ghostbusters 2. There's all the callbacks with using the same villain, which to me, I like Gozer as a villain, but what I don't like is it just very much screams of like fan appeasement. After what happened with Ghostbusters 2016, they were so afraid to try anything new in Afterlife. You have the same villain, you have the same characters in the background. Admittedly, you have got new main characters, but there's that massive connection to the original movies. This is not set just after Ghostbusters 2. This is set modern day. So we're supposed to believe that in all that time, Egon has made no upgrades to any of the equipment, because we have the original trap, admittedly laid out as a field of them, which we've not seen before, but it is the original trap. Okay, we've got the little cool RC version, and I want one, but we have the original trap, we have the original Ecto-1, really the only addition to that is the gunner's seat, but the proton packs are broadly the same. There are some minor modifications in terms of extra cables and a few extra connectors on the back, and that they've actually put the switch in that was missing in the 1984 movie, but we won't talk about that one. But no, there are a few minor additions to the gadgets, but essentially it's the same gadgets you saw in 1984 Ghostbusters. And in my opinion, the reason that was done is pure fan appeasement. Because after what happened with 2016, they were just scared of upsetting the fans. Now, that gets us on to the fandom. Now, when I talk about the fandom, I am mainly talking about a number of Facebook groups. I'm not going to name these groups, but there are a number of Facebook groups that seem to have an incredibly toxic fandom on them. I am not saying this is representative of all Ghostbusters fans. I am a Ghostbusters fan. I have friends who are Ghostbusters fans who are not like this. It is not representative of all fans. But there is a very vocal and significant minority of Ghostbusters fans who are like this. You have a group that is for fans of Ghostbusters from all over the world, and it is supposedly for all Ghostbusters fans. This is not specifically a 1984 and 1989 Ghostbusters fan group. It's supposed to be for all the Ghostbusters group. And at one point, the admins have even said on this group, we will not tolerate people bashing the movies just for the sake of bashing the movies. But that's not what's happening on this group. What we've got is every time somebody posts anything related to 2016 Ghostbusters, there is post after post after post in the comments just bashing the 2016 movie. Based on really no good reason other than people saying, oh, I didn't like the movie, oh, it was a bad movie. We are talking now. This is not a year after it was made. This is not a few weeks after the movie came out. This is 5 years later. Any mention of that movie, it descends into a toxic pit of hatred. And that is why I'm leaving. I've left that group. Well, I've not left it yet, but I am leaving that group. By the time this video is out, I will not be in that group because I've had enough of them. I think, to be honest, it is not because they think it's a bad movie. It is because they do not like the idea of an all-female Ghostbusters team. Because there is a significant proportion of this fandom, and you get it in a lot of fandoms, where these are people who like to sit at home and they are internet warriors. And they have got themselves all butthurt about this movie for whatever reason, and they seem to like to publicise that very vocally on these Facebook groups. But yeah, the Ghostbusters fandom has turned toxic, and the same thing, surprise, surprise, happened in the Star Wars fandom when they had a female main character when they did the new trilogy starting in, I think it was 2017. So again, female main character, group turns toxic. Ghostbusters, female main character, group turns toxic. Doctor Who, female doctor, group turns toxic. Can you see the common thread here? Essentially what we have happening here is we have an established fandom, a new movie is made with either one or more female main characters, and the fandom turns toxic and hates on it. This is basically because these fandoms, and I'm not saying everybody in these fandoms is like this, but there is a significant proportion of these fandoms are what a lot of people would describe as incels. And they cannot stand the idea of movies being made with female main characters. But this is why I thought I'd do this little piece. It is not a criticism of any of the movies. I've talked about the two most recent Ghostbusters movies here. The other thing to bear in mind with the Ghostbusters fandom is I think this fandom was always a bit toxic, because before 2016 came out, there was a significant proportion of the fans who hated Ghostbusters 2. And I would say not without good reason. They took what worked in Ghostbusters 1984, they ramped up the goofiness, they ramped up the amount of slime, and they said, let's make a new movie like this. I like the villain. I like Vigo the Carpathian as a villain. But we have the Statue of Liberty walking through New York powered by slime. That is somehow, in some fans' minds, less goofy than 2016 Ghostbusters. I cannot fathom how that works in people's heads. Yeah, that is what it is. I mean, I think the thing that people miss is that Ghostbusters none of the Ghostbusters movies are intended as pieces of highbrow cinema. They are intended as slightly goofy comedy movies, and as slightly goofy comedy movies, they are very good. Ghostbusters 1984 is very good. Ghostbusters 2, a little bit less good. Ghostbusters 2016, good, brought forward to a modern day audience. Ghostbusters Afterlife, good movie. Only issue I take with Ghostbusters Afterlife is there's too much fan appeasement in it and there's too much sentimentality in it. It is not as comedic as the other Ghostbusters movies. It does not have that goofiness. It is more aimed as a more serious movie, and I'm not so much of a fan of that. But I would still say it's a good movie. It's a good watch, especially if you do like the other Ghostbusters movies. But we have a fandom who will now stand up and say, I love Ghostbusters 1984, I love Ghostbusters Afterlife, I love Ghostbusters 2, but I hate 2016 Ghostbusters. I think the fandom was slightly toxic anyway, and this has just caused a certain element, quite a vocal element, to just ramp that up to 11, and that element are the butthurt basement-dwelling incels that exist in, to be honest, quite a few fandoms. For some reason, the admins on these Facebook groups do not seem to want to take the action that's needed, and just boot these people off the groups so they can sit and dwell in their basements and argue about something else. But no, they instead seem to give these people a platform where they can all talk to each other and complain about how bad this movie is in their minds. And, you know, we are talking of people here who seem to go into complete meltdown because a box set of Ghostbusters movies, a collector's edition box set. Now bear in mind, this collector's edition box set, they didn't even include the discs for the 2016 movie, but they went into meltdown because they were including a digital download. That's how bad this fandom is. They did not want a digital download of the 2016 movie, in their minds sullying the Ghostbusters 1984, 1989, 2021 franchise, because they see that 2016 is not a part of that franchise. I just cannot fathom how anybody has the time to be constantly going onto a Facebook group purely to post comments moaning about the 2016 movie every time. Because it's like these people are waiting for people to post things. Literally, as soon as a picture related to 2016 goes up, something mentioning 2016 goes up, there are 10 or 15 comments of people just complaining about that movie. And these people, it's like that is their life, is watching this group so they can moan about the 2016 movie. I just can't fathom it. But yeah, that's my rant over about how the Ghostbusters fandom has turned toxic, or was potentially always toxic. But yeah, if you are going to join Ghostbusters fan groups on Facebook, please do. But just bear in mind there are fan groups out there that are not like this. There are some where the admins do take that zero tolerance approach, and if people start moaning about 2016, they just boot them off the group. And those groups, to be honest, are a lot nicer. You get nice people on there, you get good discussion on there. The other ones that do seem to have a lot of good discussion on them are the things like the Proton Pack Builders group. So if you're going down that route of wanting to cosplay Ghostbusters, then join one of those groups where it's a builders group. They tend to, the conversation on that tends to be very much focused on the proton packs, the ghost traps, the outfits for whichever movie. I think there's two separate groups, one for the 2016 and one for the 1984 through to Afterlife, because the props are very different. It makes sense there being two different groups. But the prop builders groups are good because it is just discussion of prop building. But there is a number of groups, and I mean, you know, you can often tell if a fandom is toxic by the number of groups that appear based on it. That as soon as you get the sort of person who's, I'm going to split off and make my own group about this because the admins on that aren't letting me moan about things, that's when you know a fandom has turned toxic. So there are no end of like worldwide Ghostbusters type fan groups. So yeah, I mean, the groups are out there, the good groups are out there, but there are a lot of bad groups, and I'd like to say it's not the majority of Ghostbusters fans, and I don't believe it is, but there is a significant minority that are like this, that they just want to hate on the 2016 movie, and I would argue that it's not for the reasons that they claim it is. But yeah, I say, if you please like and subscribe to my channel. The content isn't normally like this. It is normally me making things.